Imagine waking up one day and realizing your entire existence to someone else. Your body, your voice, your pain was just background decoration. That's how she starts her story. "He said we were just props," she whispers in the leaked audio, her voice trembling like it's still trapped in that room. "He didn't even call me by name, just pointed and said, 'Stand there, look good, smile when the cameras roll.'" But this isn't just one woman's nightmare. It's the first domino in a chain of stories that's now crashing through the walls of one of music's most powerful empires. Sean "Diddy" Combs, the man behind platinum records, luxury brands, and billion-dollar parties, is being named not as a mentor, not as a mogul, but as a master manipulator in a system of silence, control, and psychological terror. Over a dozen survivors, each from different corners of the industry, are now coming forward. They didn't speak before, not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. NDAs, threats, money, reputation. "He didn't need to hurt you to control you," one former background singer says. "He just had to remind you of what you'd lose if you ever opened your mouth." In private sessions, girls were flown out with no last names, no phones, just instructions. "Wear this, sit there, smile. And above all, say nothing." One dancer, now in her late 30s, describes a screen test that turned into something else entirely. "He said we were auditioning to be part of the Diddy lifestyle." But there were no lights, just one red lamp, and a man with a camera who never said a word. Each story echoes the same structure: isolation, glamour, confusion, and then silence. "It felt like a set," another woman recalls. "Except we weren't acting. We were surviving, every second." The pattern is impossible to ignore. Gifts would come first: clothes, flights, access. Then the withdrawal, ghosting, humiliation, exile. "If you didn't play the game," one former stylist says, "you weren't just cut off, you were erased." And now, the ones he erased are drawing the outline back in. Cassie's case was just the beginning. Behind her came more anonymous names, but familiar pain: emails, contracts, whispered recordings, and the most chilling detail? A phrase repeated across at least 6 different testimonies. "He told me I wasn't a person. I was a mood, a decoration, a frame in someone else's movie." The man who once called himself the bad boy for life is now facing what may be the final act of a very different story. One not of glamour, but of ghosts finally given permission to speak. And this time, they're not whispering. The second survivor didn't come through an official statement. She didn't hold a press conference or post a tearful Instagram video. She posted a photo, blurry, taken from the corner of a room bathed in red light. In the caption, just one sentence: "I never forgot the smell of that room." It took less than an hour for the internet to connect the dots. The rug, the wall texture, even the sculpture in the background matched those seen in past footage of Diddy's infamous LA recording compound. Suddenly, this wasn't just testimony, it was evidence. And that opened the floodgates. A former assistant came forward with a detailed list of names, dates, and coded calendar events. One entry simply read, 3 guests, no press. All NDA. Another had a red exclamation point beside it. 2 emotional cleanup needed. One of the men who worked security described being told to sweep the floor and the story after certain nights. It wasn't about the people, he said. It was about the image. If something cracked that image, it had to go. Survivors began comparing details in private chat groups. The same wine brand. The same locked cabinet with a fingerprint scanner. The same man who always said, "You're safe here, just don't ask questions." And always, always the same rule. No phones, no pictures. No names, only presence. One woman, an up-and-coming model at the time, said she was told she'd be featured in a music video. Instead, she was placed in a candlelit room with 2 other girls she'd never met and a camera facing them. "He didn't speak to us directly," she said. He sat behind a partition and gave instructions through an assistant. "Touch her hair. Laugh harder. Now just freeze." The tape was never released. The video never aired. But the memory, she says, plays on loop in her mind. In one particularly haunting statement, a former intern at a production company recalled what Diddy allegedly said during a private after-party. "Women are accessories like fur coats. They look expensive, They make you look good, and when the season's over, you put them away. That line became a rallying cry for survivors now coming forward. The hashtag number not your prop flooded timelines. And behind it were faces, not anonymous shadows, but people with voices, families, careers once threatened into silence. Now the industry had no choice but to listen. Brands began pulling partnerships. Former collaborators deleted posts. Some stayed quiet, others apologized for not seeing it sooner. But the survivors didn't want apologies. They wanted accountability. Because this wasn't just about what Diddy allegedly did. It was about who helped him do it, about the agents who booked the flights, the managers who said, "This is just how it works," the journalists who whispered, "We heard, but we couldn't publish without losing access." The silence wasn't just from fear, it was policy. A system designed to protect power at all costs. And now that system is cracking. Because the people it silenced are no longer begging to be heard, they're demanding it. The pressure had been building for weeks. The headlines weren't fading, they were multiplying. The survivors weren't retreating, they were organizing. The story had outgrown the tabloids and broken through the entertainment pages. It was now front-page news, being debated on national television, dissected on nightly panels, and whispered behind executive doors at major record labels. And then came the moment no one thought would happen. Diddy responded. It wasn't a confession or even an apology. It was a controlled, studio-lit video message. "I've always tried to uplift my people," he said. "I've made mistakes, but I've never hurt anyone intentionally. I'm being targeted because I'm powerful." His voice was steady. The message was clear. Deny everything, reframe it as persecution, and hope the wave passes. But this wasn't the 2000s. This wasn't a rumor you could bury under a hit record. This was 2025. And the voices weren't just louder, they were documented. One day after his video, a group of 7 survivors released a joint statement and a timeline complete with screenshots, travel records, staff testimonies, and one damning video clip. In it, Diddy can be seen backstage at a private event, whispering to a handler, "They don't need names, just looks. Put her next to the lights and keep the camera rolling." The backlash was immediate. Concerts were canceled. A luxury fashion brand removed every past campaign with his name. Billboard removed his Lifetime Achievement tribute from their website. But what mattered most wasn't corporate response. It was courtroom momentum. A federal inquiry had been opened, quietly, weeks prior. But now, with public pressure mounting and new legal filings being submitted daily, indictments were being considered. The word RICO was trending, the same statute once used against crime families and organized rings. Because this wasn't just about one man's behavior. It was about a network of silence, built over decades, protecting the powerful while consuming the vulnerable. Cassie, whose original lawsuit cracked the surface, issued one more statement. Just one. "It took me years to realize what I went through wasn't normal. It wasn't love. It wasn't art. It was abuse, wrapped in money and fame. And now, I speak not just for myself, but for every girl who thought she was alone in the room." That quote appeared on banners at protests, on t-shirts, on murals. And then came the court date. Survivors filed in together, not as a publicity stunt, but as a shield. They sat side by side, hands linked, unblinking. Diddy walked in alone. Cameras weren't allowed, but the sketch from that day, the artist's pencil capturing the stark contrast, went viral. A man surrounded by lawyers. And across from him, the women he once called props. Now they were the main characters, and the stage was his no longer. The final words in the court hearing weren't shouted. They were whispered, steady and sharp. A survivor turned to the judge and said, "We're not here for revenge. We're here to make sure the next girl never has to be told she's part of the furniture." That sentence silenced the room and echoed across a culture built on manufactured glamour. The lights may dim on Diddy's empire, but for the first time, the lights are finally on in the rooms no one was ever supposed to see.